Welcome to Through Your Looking Glass, a podcast that explores the world of research technology. Combining speed and insights, ResTech reflects a deeper knowledge of the people around us. We're leading the conversation about this complex industry, which spans from traditional market research to advertising, media measurement, and beyond. Join us as we chat with experts and enthusiasts in the ResTech community and learn more about its evolution, application, and ever-growing potential.
Well, welcome. This is Patrick Comer again. I'm the founder and CEO of Lucid. And on this episode of Through Your Looking Glass, I'm very excited to be talking to my friend, my colleague, my compatriot, Mr. Shane Skillen, the CEO of Hotspex. Shane, we've been doing this for a long time, for more than 20 years. So I couldn't be happier that you've joined the show today. So welcome.
Thanks, Patrick. Great honor to be here.
Likewise. We've been working together for quite a while in various businesses, but to be honest, I've never heard the full story of how Hotspex came to be. So I'd love to learn more about how Hotspex got started and its evolution over the past 20 years.
Yeah, great. I haven't told the story in a while, but I lived it, so it's easy to get off the tip of the tongue when asked. So going back 20 years, wow. I was in business school, and myself and a few friends, which became my co-founders, we had this idea to involve people in the design of products and services. And we wanted to do that because we were just really excited about working with brands. I spent a brief stint in investment banking during a summer, and I really didn't care for it. I thought that was going to be my chosen profession for better part of a decade. There are TV shows designed around it. All the seemingly richest, coolest people that I knew were working in investment banking. And I spent a summer in there, and it just really wasn't for me. I didn't sense the purpose or the value creation that I thought might have been there. And so you think about, what do you really want to do? And the idea was to have an impact, to work with super cool brands doing super cool shit, trying to change the world around us by being close to marketing as we possibly could be. And so we thought we could involve people in the design of products and services through surveys online, and then two things would happen. One, we'd get great insights for those brands to go and make better products and services. We didn't even know about the field of market research or how sophisticated it was. We just figured, hey, let's get people's opinions. We'll tell brands what they want. They'll make the stuff. And then those same people that were involved in those surveys would want to buy the stuff. So, come and design a new can for a beverage company. And you, one, are going to give a bunch of great feedback back to Pepsi, but two, you'll want to buy it when it hits the market. And you tell all your friends. And so we went and raised some money from some very generous billionaires with that investment thesis, which was we were going to help grow brands through something called consumer involvement marketing. And we built a bunch of technology to do surveys.
Wow. I've never heard this story. Consumer involvement technology. That's great. That sounds very .com, right?
Consumer involvement technology, yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's very exciting to our billionaire investors. And we went out and we picked up some clients, and it worked, sort of. So our first client was Schick Razors, and we managed to get about 25,000 people to be involved in a future razor design. And we gave some great feedback, like phone books, if you remember what a phone book is. Phone books full of information and verbatims back to Schick, which they didn't really use, but they did care that when we went back to those same 25,000 people, 80% of them had switched their razor usage from Gillette to Schick. So the idea, the thesis that if you involve people in the design of products, they will use them, did play out. The problem was we couldn't get enough people to do it. So we couldn't make a meaningful impact on brands. And so the business model just started to wither, and it actually failed. Inside of, I'd say, about 2 years, we realized that we weren't really going to have a viable business here. We'd run out through all our capital. We didn't qualify to get our second tranches of capital because we couldn't meet our financial hurdles. And it was dire. It was Kraft dinner and begging my mom for money to pay rent, and lost all of our staff. And then, luck is everything in tech, as you know, Patrick. This is what I think every entrepreneur says, timing and luck. General Motors came along and said, we don't want you involving people in the design of our cars. We've got a very proficient group of people that do that. Thank you very much. And we don't want a Homermobile. But you're doing surveys on the interweb. They called it the interweb back then. Can you put our phone survey on the interweb? And all my credit cards, which I think was 15 at the time, were maxed. They were going to pay us. Wow. I said, sure, that sounds like something we could do for you. And so we took a very complicated, probably to this day still one of the most complicated surveys we've ever programmed, and it was from Miller Brown. It was a brand and ad tracker, and we put it online. And so we had no idea what we were doing. We were just collecting ones and zeros. We didn't know what context there was for it. And so essentially we sent them back the data, and they invited us to the presentation, and I went, and I was not that keen to go because it was a very painful experience working with Miller Brown, because they weren't used to working with technology vendors, and we weren't used to working with market research professionals. And you have these moments in your life, I think people call them epiphanies, or I just totally blown away with what I saw them do with those ones and zeros. I remember all we want to do is work with cool brands to help, make a difference and impact in the world. That data let them make predictions like General Motors will go bankrupt, which did happen. The Korean auto brands will rise and get these respective market shares, which did happen. This was the return on investment of all of the auto advertising that's going on right now. I was absolutely blown. I was like, you did that from the ones and zeros we sent you? What is this? They're like, it's market research. So I was like, wow, that's it. That's what we're going to do. So we went back and we pivoted, and we became a market research survey provider, because we still didn't know how to write surveys, analyze them, or come up with any of these predictions. So we started doing research for other traditional research companies. I think not too dissimilar from how OTX, where you were once upon a time, got its start.
Oh yeah, we took a lot of offline research and pulled it online at OTX in the US. I'm sure you're doing a similar thing in Canada and other markets.
That's exactly what we're doing. And so then what we realized is that wasn't what was, floating our boat, because we wanted to work with the brands. We wanted to work with the Red Bulls and the Toyotas and the Unilevers and the Nestles and the Procter & Gambles. And so we had to build our own models out. So how do you become a great research company? You build tools that are highly predictive, more predictive than your competitors. And so we started doubling down on behavioral science, and we invested very significant amount, like millions of dollars, into building out a behavioral science capability so that we could say that our models were more predictive of any other in the world. And our North Star was to say, hey, we want to be able to go head to head with Kantar now, which was Miller Brown previously, and say that we actually have a system that's more predictive than what they had. To do that, you've got to explore all kinds of different research methodologies, like implicit research. We created an emotional map that a lot of our clients now call their unified theory of brand. And we started to win really interesting work. And we got pulled into packaging decisions and product decisions and consumer segmentation decisions. And we were really had that seat at the table that we wanted to be involved in the creation of new products and services for the world's coolest brands. And it was amazing, man. Like it was right where I wanted to be personally, and right where I wanted to be with regards to the team as well too. I mean, Patrick, you talk a lot about one of the benefits of technology companies attracting great people. That's what we've been able to do. So because we've stood up this business model, we've been able to attract a very specific type of individual to our team that are just, turned on with having an impact in the world and working with cool brands and having that seed of an insight that goes and unleashes a tremendous amount of value. I mean, some people want to go work in advertising, and Facebook and Google are super interesting companies. Certainly, they're advertising companies, though. They're running ads, trying to get right ads to the right people at the right time. I much prefer our side of the table, which is creating that insight, that seed of an idea that when you unleash it properly, it creates all that value. For example, we often have to train our staff what an insight is. So you can have a fact that dogs and cats need to eat food. You can have an observation that they eat food when their owners eat food, but you can have, more importantly, the insight, which is that owners feel guilty when they're eating and their pets are not eating high quality food at the same time. And that's the insight that unleashed Purina. And that, that created called Purina maybe a $30 billion market cap company inside Nestle. And just being able to be in that space and to work with these brands doing that stuff has been just a true delight for me, and has satisfied all my need for professional and personal curiosity. I just feel very lucky to have stumbled into market research, which I think most people end up doing.
It's almost how everyone gets in. We stumble into research somehow. We didn't start, but then we find it and get excited by it and get passionate about it.
100%. I find more and more of the grads that we hire, because we do a lot of hiring. Like I said, it's a very specific culture at Hotspex. It's not for everybody. We're starting to bump into more and more people that did set out to want to work in insights. They're like, I want to be consulting around, I want to be the voice of the customer so I can consult that back into brands. Which is great. And we're starting to pull from consulting. We're starting to pull a little bit from investment banking, and certainly from marketing as well too.
Well, thinking over the past 20 years, it sounds like technology helped generate the start of Hotspex, meaning that moment when GM called and said, I need to move offline to interwebs or online. That was the cause of that was this transformation of technology.
Correct.
And so the question comes, we're continuing to see transformation in technology. But if you think about the 20 years, what were the big moments where you've seen technology up level or shift the capability of Hotspex or what your brands and partners expect out of you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And technology is a driver of all disruption. I love that Mark Andreessen once said, software will eat the world. And I think that's happened in every industry. I mean, you can't look at an industry where technology hasn't massively disrupted it. I mean, we've got a massive grocery client that considers themselves a technology company that just happens to sell groceries, and they're right. Because any company that doesn't embrace technology is either not around anymore or is in deep trouble and about to hit a brick wall. So for us, I'd say the inflection points were the move of clients to want to embrace online research. There was a lot of backlash on it back in the day, where it's, how do you know these people are who they really say they are?
Are these real people?
Are these real people? How do I know they're not just at home, sitting there in their underwear pretending to be somebody else? And so we had to flip that script, right, and change that conversation. It's like, well, isn't that who you want? Because don't you know that in online surveys, people consumption of alcohol is actually 30% higher? And the reason why is because when you talk to someone live, you got all this social bias that's introduced into the mix. And in fact, I would say an online survey is more predictive of phone surveys where you've got another human in the mix, because you introduce all these biases. So I'd say clients getting over that fact and seeing how online research offered benefits around data quality. You can start to do different things as well too. With research online, you can show people things. You can show them ads. You can show them products. You can return to sample to get them easily. So I would say just that whole digital shift in clients embracing it was a big inflection point. The next inflection point, I would say, was really mobile. So people doing, being able to get people to do quick surveys on mobile devices. And we had a big panel ourselves back in the day. I mean, we felt that was going to be something that we really needed to do. And so we built out a very significant panel in Canada and the United States. And when we saw people starting to do surveys on mobile, we started to be able to get very quick feedback. Nothing like we're getting right now on the Lucid platform, but just more rapid feedback, where things that used to take a week, we could fill in a couple days. And because we saw a lot of people starting to access the survey invites that we were sending them on mobile devices. And now, another big piece technology has had is us being able to stitch together various parts of the ecosystem. So right now, our core focus is on creating automated tools that use research technology or res tech. And so it's using a survey platform, Survey Gizmo, I think it's now called Alchemy, coupled into an API with Lucid. And, that allows us to do things incredibly quickly with an incredibly high degree of accuracy and to be extremely agile for our clients. I think the next horizon, as much as software ate the world, I think the AI is going to start to eat the software soon. Where you just think about what AIs can do these days. I mean, we thankfully have a huge breadth of clients across banking, auto, consumer packaged goods, even technology companies like Google. So we get to get asked a lot of different questions to answer. And more so, we're seeing AI start to disrupt all of those businesses that we're working on. I mean, you've got AIs now having relationships with people. So in Japan, about 20% of teenagers will say that they've actually fallen in love with an AI chatbot because the chat's that good. Yeah. They're always there for you. They never let you down. They always make you feel good about yourself. And it's actually tricking people's subconscious into that actually being a form of love, I guess. You know, you've got AIs driving trucks. We've got AIs writing symphonies. We've got AIs painting paintings. There's AI now where you can just sketch what you want your website to look on a napkin, and it'll actually build you a pretty good website. And so I think that is the next horizon for all of us, and I think this space, and it's extremely exciting.
Two big themes there. One is on the ResTech side, how your services and your capabilities at Hotspex and how you delight your clients is starting to change because you can stitch things together. You talked about our friends at Alchemer, previously known as Survey Gizmo, and of course, I know and love the Lucid APIs, but the story isn't about the APIs. The story isn't even about the stitching. The story is about, in my mind, the ability to delight customers with insights on a speed and scale that they were not even thought possible before.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And you look at what technology does. It makes everything cheaper, better, and faster. And the curve, Patrick, is just fantastic. I mean, you think about when we invented electricity and how not long ago that was in the grand spectrum of time of humanity.
Yep.
Just the pace of change and the acceleration of things getting cheaper, faster, better all the time. I mean, right now, we're doing surveys for clients in meetings where something will come up at, say, meeting.
In the actual meeting, yeah.
In the meeting. Something will come up at, say, minute 7 in a 1-hour meeting. And by the end of that meeting, we'll have a full chart answering that question with a technology solution that we've created by stitching together some of these things, which, just wouldn't be possible. And it's the client delight is off the chart because you think about the efficiency that creates.
Yeah.
Our clients, need to go and beat their competitors, and the more efficient that we can make them, and the higher the quality insights that we can get them more quickly, drives their success. P&G is a great example. They're all about being superior. So they're about superior insight and having that really good superior insight, and then activating it incredibly well with incredible efficiency. And so they're looking for speed. They're looking for quality of insights. And that's what technology offers. And certainly in our space, but again, as I said, I think in every space.
It's that magical moment when a user, a customer, a brand, or even internally being able to generate insights on the turn of a proverbial dime where things happen very, very quickly. That magical moment is real. I remember I did a keynote in the city of New Orleans for their entrepreneurial program with Tulane. And we asked questions of some of the attendees when they walked into the session, which is about 45 minutes long. And at the end, we presented 4 or 5 questions that they had posed with data from the market, like real answers in real time. And that's a very different set of expectations. And I'm wondering if customers are now starting to think about how fast they can get insights back because the first big move was offline to online, where it went from, say, months to weeks. And it feels like now we're going from weeks to days to hours. And so I'm wondering if your customers are now thinking about insights differently, or thinking about how fast they can move in a way that's driving value for you.
They are. There's a great survey that came out in Grit. They do 2 waves. They do 1 wave every year, which votes on the most innovative companies in the world. And we've actually won that in North America as voted by clients.
How do you do that? I got to be honest, Shane. Like every year, you're at the top of the list, the most innovative companies in the world out of the Grit report. And I'm super jealous and super excited for you. So how do you get that brand image of innovation to be so pervasive when you're up against like Kantar and Ipsos and Miller Brown and the rest? Like how does that happen? It's amazing.
Yeah, I think my staff would probably say it's a lot of ADD for me. Where's the new shiny object? Why aren't we using AI right now to tell us who to be calling this afternoon? And it's just always been my insatiable curiosity about the new. So right. I read a lot. I listen to a lot of podcasts like you do, and I pay very, very high attention to what's going on tangentially to our industry in all industry. And so it gives me and my team ideas about what we could do. And we've just always had a culture of, why can't it be? Why is anything impossible? Look at what humanity has created. I mean, we've decades ago managed to put human beings on the moon. Why can't we use artificial intelligence to write a report for us that's
Right. Why can't it happen?
yeah, why can't that happen? Look at everything that's going on out there. And so, we don't ask why can't we? We ask, why not? And so
Why not?
we're very lucky to have an amazing client list that likes to experiment with the new. In fact, I talk to chief marketing officers every year, and I ask them, my favorite question is to ask them, what's keeping you awake at night, Mrs. or Mr. Chief Marketing Officer? And we actually got into the media business 2 years ago because they said my media ROI. I've got this massive media expense. The old adage is I don't know which half of my advertising is working. I want new ways to make that advertising work more effectively for me. I'm being bombarded by ad tech companies. My multi-mix media mix models aren't telling me that my traditional stuff's working as well anymore. All the TV networks are telling me it is. How can I know for sure, and how can I make that work better? Because if I'm spending 10% of revenue, which at a company like Procter & Gamble could be many billions of dollars, the better they can get that to work, the more effective they're going to be, the more shareholder growth that they're going to create. So, listening to that, we paid attention. And so we said, okay, so it would be helpful to you if we were to marry our insights with media. And the resounding answer was yes. So we bought a media company a couple of years ago, which, again, satisfied my professional and personal curiosity just to do another reinvention. I'd say we've done 4 reinventions at Hotspex over the years. And so we did that, and it's been fascinating for me to learn that whole new space, particularly because, ad tech was such a big focal point of marketing and of CMOs for call it the better part of the last 15 years. And that's what we're starting to see in res tech now. So all the things that were learned there about algorithms and getting the right ad to the right person at the right time. I think a lot of that is flowing into research technology, where it's like, look what we can get computers to do that, mere mortals, the low tech human beings can't do as well. And so being able to marry media with insights has been absolutely amazing for myself and my team. And then again, to my point earlier about team, we're all about team at Hotspex. And so the caliber of people that we're able to attract to our firm, because we do things that are innovative like that, like getting into the media space, has just paid massive dividends for us, and more specifically for our clients. So it's this virtuous circle of innovation that breeds brand growth, which attracts good talent, which attracts even more brands, which attracts even more talent. And you asked before, why are we so innovative in these conversations with CMOs? You always want to know, how do people get promoted in your organization? So we at Hotspex, we say we build brands, we build careers at Hotspex. If you want to just fly under the radar and do the status quo and do things marginally, incrementally better than they were done last year, it's not a good place for you to come work in Hotspex. But if you want to look for game-changing, innovative new methodologies, that's what we're all about. We promise to our team that we'll expose you to huge global challenges with the biggest, coolest brands in the world, working with bleeding edge capabilities and technology. That's what you can get to achieve at Hotspex. And why that's interesting to our clients is, if you think about how you get promoted inside a marketing organization at a Fortune 1000 company, the key thing is to do things differently and to do things in an innovative way. If you want to be sitting there as a junior person or a mid-level person, you're not getting that bump if you're not trying to do things differently, more efficiently, more innovatively, and in a better way than what's been done previously. So we like scratching that itch that a lot of brands out there in the world have. And so it's a huge focus for us. I mean, we have weekly meetings on innovation. We've got a whole group dedicated to it. And we're lucky to partner with all of these clients that help fund a lot of that for us. So we typically don't innovate without a client partner that's laid out a specific problem that we're trying to solve. So it actually creates a very effective process to bring great new technology to market.
Well, it sounds like there's a standard innovation process and culture at Hotspex. And you just mentioned there's a weekly meeting on innovation. What is that like? How do you drive that meeting and make it exciting every time versus just the weekly meeting on innovation we show up to?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So the weekly meeting on innovation is typically on one or two different product areas that we're working on. And so we bring to that a cross-functional team. We have a whole technology group at Hotspex. So we have a chief technology officer that came from a major holdco ad agency. And he's got a team. And then we've got a team of project managers that manage our research projects, but they also manage our technology projects just like they would a research project. So that's great. And then we bring our various functional experts to bear on a problem. And so it's great because we bring people from different expertise areas, technology people, and then project management capability to actually start to drive toward a final solution that, as I mentioned, a client will be involved in. So we know there's going to be good product market fit because we're not off, inventing blue steam, to use a metaphor, when people might not want it. We're literally designing things to specific client needs, and then we get to have pilots with those clients. And then when we launch it and it's successful, they typically tend to refer it within their organization and outside their organization. And then we have a commercial ready product that we will go and scale across our client base and new clients as well too.
Wow. All right, so I got to ask the question you asked the CMOs. So, Mr. CEO, what's keeping you up at night coming into 2021?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Patrick. As you know, we're in a pandemic right now.
That's why we're not together. That's why we're not doing this live in New Orleans, right?
I always love to get to the French Quarter, but it'll happen again.
It'll happen.
So, I mean, what's keeping me awake at night is the pandemic. I mean, it's been great for us. We've just had our best year ever. Clients are trying to figure out how to make sure their brands are hyper relevant and understanding all the different flux of consumer needs that are changing. But our staff's working remotely, and remote work has some good pros and it has some cons. I think for the more senior staff, I think it's okay. They've got their families that they're spending more time with. They've knocked out some commute time. They don't want to hang out and meet their future spouses and socialize and have beers after work the way our junior people too. So I feel like those people are getting robbed of some of that ability. We've had, I don't know, at Hotspex in 20 years, five marriages of people that have met at Hotspex. Yeah. Wow. Which is great. I mean, that's not anything special about Hotspex. Just 20 somethings meet their future spouses in their place of work more often than not. So I worry about that. And so I would like to see the pandemic end so that we can start to get back together more often. I don't think the pendulum will swing back to 5 days a week in the office, but it will get us back together more often. I also, wonder how technology is gonna shape our space, and we're in a good spot. So I'm less worried about it for Hotspex, but in that same study that I mentioned, a lot of the larger research companies are planning to downsize staff. Some mid-sized firms too. I see, for the first time I've seen since ever, actually, since I've been paying attention to this, real threat to the base of insights professionals. And I think that's going to happen as a result.
In terms of their jobs, in terms of their career path. That's what you mean by the threat?
Yeah. We have it quite as bad as, say, travel agents when things like Expedia were created. But there is a technology disruption that's coming. And I can see that the pandemic has massively accelerated that. Client brands are being asked to reduce their budgets. And so that's resulted in, how are we going to reduce our budgets? Can we do more of this research internally? And the answer is yes, particularly if you invest in technology, in ResTech, because you can use automated tools to do things that might have been done externally, and you can save money, you can save time. And so we're seeing that start to happen. I mean, it's already been happening, but it's becoming more evenly distributed. And a great quote is, the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed.
That's a great quote. In 2020, we saw a lot of early customers move faster to programmatic sampling, to ResTech. And I think a lot of the stitching together that you mentioned earlier of different platforms in the ResTech stack, those products and services will start to really engage in 2021. So I really think the real disruption you're talking about is a 2021 disruption versus 2020, as it's taken a while for products and services to be built and executed. But I'll tell you this: in 2020 alone, Lucid saw a 40% increase in the number of surveys run totally on a global basis, and that's around 25 million incremental interviews in 1 year alone. So it was a massive explosion of volume last year.
I mean, that's incredible. I mean, we were part of that volume.
Yeah, you were. Hell yeah.
Yeah,
We
and
saw your massive growth from Hotspex in terms of that stitching.
yeah, it's been great for us, and so that's what keeps me awake at night. Is so our team. How do we make sure that our team are positioning themselves to be relevant in the new world in 21, 22, 23, 24? We train a lot. We try to give them exposure to different problems and challenges. Right now, what's happened is we've been able to use ResTech to get them out of grunt work, to get them out of things like charting, to get them out of things like programming surveys, so they can think more. And it's been incredibly rewarding for them because they get to be ultra creative and do things that the machines can't do yet. And they really like that. What keeps me awake is making sure that the pace of our teams, I call it relevancy, stays up with what's going to be required from them, because ResTech is going to go grab a big segment of the market. It's going to do a bunch of stuff cheaper, faster, better. But there's a bunch of stuff ResTech's just not going to be able to do, specifically around strategic research. Yeah, and so most of the research we do is strategic market research. It's stuff that we can't get ResTech to do. The metaphor that I like is, you can have, I forget how the model works, but you can, to clients, you can be a neurosurgeon, the patient's asleep and you're just an expert. You can be a GP where you ask them questions and you get feedback back. You can be a nurse where you're at them anytime they have a question 24/7, or you can be a pharmacist where you're just, getting them medicine in almost an automated way where you don't really need much engagement with them. Our strategy has been to be neurosurgeons for our clients, but also GPs. So we actually consult with our clients to help create strategies to create brand growth around, what should your shopper marketing strategy be? What should your brand positioning be? What consumer segments should you go after? And all that with a behavioral science lens so that we get a better answer than what they can get elsewhere in the market. But once they know that answer, we want to give them an access to a pharmacy where they're not even going to come to us to test concepts, to test packaging, to test new ads, and have two things happen. One, that cost, and two, the turnaround time. So once we've told you what your brand positioning strategy is, here's an easy self-serve to use tool where you can test an ad and get a report back in 1 hour that says that it's a good ad. And then with our media function, we can actually say, here's where your ad tech stack should place that ad to maximize the effectiveness. So that's the line that we're trying to walk, is where do our human brains and Hotspex play versus where does the technology play? And so we're trying to get that balance right now, because I care deeply about our staff. We're a big family at Hotspex. One of our core values is that we have each other's back, and so I view a tremendous responsibility to make sure that we're growing the careers of our team in such a way such that they have a resiliency in this industry, because I do think that, to your point, in 2021, there are major changes coming. I mean, we already see it where, ad tech is going to start to shake up the way work is done. And we're not too different from all of the other industries that have been massively disrupted by technology.
Not all too different. Well, you mentioned before AI as coming and it's here. How are you currently using AI? What are you excited about in terms of AI? Of course, AI is a big topic of conversation at Lucid. But I'm curious, as you see it as an opportunity and as a disruptor, what are your thoughts on it right now?
Yeah, I mean, we always love a challenge, and so when new disruptions come along, we don't run from them. We try to aggressively embrace them. I had somebody very, very senior at Google explain that some of the new AI technologies that are coming online are going to be as impactful to humanity as the internet has been. And I mean, that is a huge statement.
It's a bold statement.
Yeah, but what if they're right? I mean, I think there's incredible things going on, as I said before, where you've got, AI writing code, you've got AI driving cars, soon there'll be AI flying planes, AI trading stocks, AI telling you what you should have for dinner tonight. How far are we away from a brand manager asking a machine, how should I grow my brand? What package should I launch? What's going on in the detergent category that I should be aware of? Things like that. And once that starts to happen, we just want to make sure that we're involved in those conversations and have a tech stack set up so that we're helping that to come to fruition in a way where we're part of that conversation. We're in the mix.
Well, the way I look at it as insights is all about human curiosity, and human curiosity is insatiable. I don't know anyone who's gotten a chart or an insight or any search query gone, I'm satiated. I have all the answers I need. I no longer need to have insights. In my world, I believe that answers beget more questions. From a ResTech standpoint, I think a lot of the technology that's been built is very good at answering the type of questions that we've asked before and getting those answers, but it's not ready yet to ask the new questions. And I think the same thing is probably true for at the moment, any AI process, as it will be able to replicate the type of curiosity and the type of questions that were asked before, but may be challenged to create net new questions, net new ideas, net new concepts that need to be addressed, because curiosity evolves and changes over time.
Yeah.
We were talking before about GPT-3 as one of the exciting or cool things that you're looking at from innovation. What are your thoughts on that right now?
Yeah, I mean, just to loop back to your question analogy, I think that's exactly right. I mean, Einstein, probably one of the premier geniuses to walk the earth. I think he's thousands of quotes and solved some serious problems for humanity. He had a quote, and I won't get it right. I'll butcher it a little bit, but something along the lines of, if you ask him, you've got 1 hour to solve this problem, Albert. How are you going to do it? And he's like, well, I'd spend 98% of my time trying to ask the right question about it, and then it'd be easy to solve it. So understanding what that question to ask, I think you're exactly right, is everything. And will AIs help figure out the question you should be asking versus what you've asked? And that's what we do a lot of time for our clients right now is, this is what you've asked us to ask, but what we really think you want to do is X. And so we think you should ask Y in addition to what you wanted to ask, but we think it's a slightly different question. And usually that gets the breakthrough insight that powers brand growth. You bring up GPT-3. I've been playing around with it. I've only known about it for about a week, but I've seen it do amazing things. I typed into a one-line box on something I found on Reddit, a headline, and I wrote, artificial intelligence will dramatically change the way the insights function works. And it wrote me a 20-page essay, if you will, on that, which is better than anything I would have written. Yeah. And Patrick, it did it in 60 seconds. So what's that going to mean for everything? I mean, you've now got, this opportunity to have AI, writing amazing content, and, what disruption is that going to bring? I know you use it to play Dungeons and Dragons or write Dungeons and Dragons storylines.
AI Dungeon is my current GPT-3 fix, but
think about that. I mean, how long would that take you to craft that stuff on your own? It's forever. So it's that, and then it's think about that across all aspects of our business in research, and where can we use AI and machine learning to actually start to do things cheaper, faster, and better? Because again, that's what clients are demanding, and that's how to best help them.
If you've created all these surveys as Hotspex for customers on a wide variety of topics, could you train AI to basically create a survey on the fly based on a single question or a single concept? And how fast could it generate interesting questions that you may not even come up with based upon all the questions that you and your team have ever asked anyone in all the surveys you ever run? If that was the training set for the AI, what would it come up with a brand new question for whatever product your customer's trying to think about?
Right. So imagine all the things that would happen behind the scenes if a brand manager said, what new cereal should I launch? The AI would go and look at, okay, what cereals are in market, which ones are growing and which ones are declining. What can I find out about those cereals in secondary data that's all out there already? And then what questions might I want to ask a sample of human beings that are eventually going to buy these cereals? And then based on that insight, what's the next question and the next question, the next question? Because that's what we find ourselves doing with Agile Research, with our Access to Lucid platform. I mean, it is staggeringly powerful to get an insight and then to be able to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more surveys by the next day on things that came out of that discussion with the client. You used to not be able to do that. Back in the day, you'd write your survey, go out to the phone, and then you'd have to do a whole other wave. So it'd just be chalked up to, maybe we'll figure that out down the road and let's make a bet. Now we can bring a level of agility and certainty because we've got access to such agile research. And then I think you're right. In the future, the AIs will start helping us to understand what questions we should be asking, and eventually it'll know how to go and ask those questions itself, and then it'll just come back with, Mr. or Mrs. Brand Manager, here's your full profile for your new cereal that you should launch, and by the way, here's your whole marketing plan, here's your media plan, good luck.
Have fun, right? Well, I look forward to that moment when you ask a question and other questions that should be asked around that question are also asked automatically, right? And then the questions and answers, a machine learning process may be able to develop questions, stitch it together with ResTech, and then for any question or idea you have, information will be collected and pulled together that can inspire you to change what you're doing. So I'm excited by it. I think it's probably sooner than we think all these things are coming down the pipe.
Yeah, and it is. And again, it's one of the things that keeps me awake is, how do we make sure that the world of insights pros and those that are interested to work in insights are relevant still in that new world. I mean, I watched what happened in media. You had some people that worked in traditional media buying, radio, print, magazine, outdoor, transition well into the new digital media world, and some that didn't. And again, I talk to a lot of CMOs every year, and one trend I realize is that what they call an old school CMO is almost irrelevant now. The new school CMO that is data driven are the ones that are actually, getting that gig and staying in those positions for a relatively long period of time. And so those new school CMOs, those are the ones that are going to embrace data. They're going to embrace AI. They're embracing ad tech and now res tech. I think any marketing department that's not using res tech to make better, faster decisions is not going to be able to compete against their competitors.
I think that's true. Speed, scale matters in a way that it's probably always mattered, but now it's a difference maker in competitiveness. Well, this is incredible. I do have my final standard 3 questions, but before we get there, Shane, is anything else you want to bring up or ask about or pull to the table?
Yeah, there's one more thing I did want to bring up, Patrick. Thanks for asking. Yeah, and it's, what do clients care about today? And, again, the survey that got released in the Grit recently was very focused on how client needs are changing. That we saw a lot of budgets were decreasing and people looking to do more with less. But, top 3 drivers that clients are looking for, but why they choose suppliers or partners, as we like to call ourselves, like us: data quality, service levels, and pricing. And for us to be competitive on those 3 drivers, it's ResTech. It's all ResTech because it gets us better data quality. It gets us incredible service levels because we're able to do things much more quickly and have a lot more time to think, and we can do agile research. And then the pricing has actually been super helpful as well too, where we've seen just the cost of sample decreasing now that we have all this incredible technology because of algorithms that companies like Lucid are developing to help us do research in a much more efficient way.
And we've definitely seen the same trend where data quality is improving dramatically, where we have that whole pricing schedule where the cost of data collection is decreasing as the cost of sample on a CPI basis. But what that means is that more data can be generated faster at higher quality, which means the overall insight capacity is growing. And I was just inspired what you said earlier, where used to be you would ask questions in a survey and then you would have to deliver them the next morning. But with this agile or iterative process, you can ask a few questions and then before, in an hour, generate new questions and on throughout the evening. And by the next morning, you've really dug into the problem in a way that was not possible before. And that iteration must be just amazing for not only for your team to get excited about what they're doing, but for the customers as well.
100%. And it brings a level of fun to it that it's almost like a game where we're trying to get to the answer. And now we've been given all these interesting new tools that allow us to do that. And so, very excited about the future of ResTech because we see more and more tools coming online for us to just get better, faster, and still cheaper for our clients.
That's awesome. Thanks for bringing that one up. Well, I'm going to move to the last three questions that I ask every single podcast. Go off topic a little bit, but the first question I always ask is, what was your first job and what did you learn from it?
Well, the first job I want to talk about, my first job, I was an entrepreneur cutting grass for neighbors in my area where I grew up, and it was great. I learned that you can go out and make a lot more money than your friends can if you're an entrepreneur. And the job that I really want to talk about, though, my first real job.
It's still true.
Yeah, it's still true. Can be. There's a lot more risk, but if you get things right and you get super lucky, as we discussed, there can be more fulfillment and more reward. The first meaningful job that I had was tree planting, and so that involves
What does tree planting mean?
So as you might imagine, in order to create wood, you've got to cut down trees. When lumber companies do that, the contract that they have to have is they've got to replace those trees. So you can imagine a clear-cut forest hiring a tree planting company to go and hire kids to go replant the trees. So what it involves around, like a 14-hour day of trudging around in a clear-cut mosquito and black fly infested swamp to put trees in the ground such that in 30, 40, 50 years, the lumber company can cut them all down again. But that was just a brutal job, physically, mentally. It paid okay, but just the isolation and the monotony and the pain of the mosquitoes and the black flies. And it's been good because it's given me a grit where I've not been in a situation since then that I've hated more than a minute I hated tree planting.
Everything else is easier than that.
Yeah, I can always look back and just say, at least I'm not tree planting.
Fair enough. Another question is, what's the best and hardest bit of feedback you've ever received?
Patrick, the best piece of feedback I've ever gotten, I unfortunately still get it from time to time, much less often, but it's that, Shane, you've got one mouth and two ears. You should probably try to use them closer to that proportion. So stop talking so much. And they're right. And the joy of life, as you mentioned earlier, is that curiosity. To be able to listen to someone and deeply understand where they're coming from and be empathetic about their situation, I think is the best part of all of life. And so constantly got to remind myself that if you're talking too much, you're not listening. And listening is really the joy of what I think humanity is all about.
I agree. I love learning to listen better. I think it's a lesson that we ought to learn over and over again, especially as we become leaders and CEOs. Listening becomes actually more important than speaking sometimes. So I'm with you on that. Last question is, what's the most important thing you learned from your mother?
So my mother, when I graduated from business school, right as I was starting Hotspex, she gave me a book, Dr. Zeus book, said, "All the places you'll go." Mm-hmm. And she told me, she's like, "Shane, you've got to take responsibility for yourself. Don't think that you can blame other people or us as your parents for anything that's happened to you. It's your life. You need to really own it and not blame other people for things that have gone poorly to a point where it almost debilitates you from achieving for yourself." And she was exactly right. I feel very sorry for people that got a chip on their shoulder or that can't move forward because they're blaming other people for things that might have happened to them. And I think in society, we're going to start to see a lot more of that, where people will just get stuck and not take responsibility for their own actions. And, I don't get it right all the time. In fact, with all the innovation we do at Hotspex, I get it wrong most of the time. And the key is to own it and just learn from it. Sometimes you win and sometimes you learn.
Sounds like graduating from business school is an important moment in your life as well. What school did you go to? When was that?
I went to a school called the Richard Ivey School of Business in Canada, which at the time was the top ranked business school in our country. And it was transformational for me. Just the teaching was incredible. The peer group they was working with is incredible. And instrumental to getting Hotspex going was when I graduated, I called Richard Ivey. So you walk under his name every day, the Richard Ivey School of Business. Yeah. He was my first phone call. I said, hey, Richard, I left him a voicemail. I just graduated from your school. I'm starting this company. It's going to be a marketing company. I'd love your advice. And I didn't think he'd call me back, but he did. His assistant called me that afternoon, scheduled me 15 minutes was all I got with him the following week. And I just said, Richard, given what you know about what I've told you I'm trying to do, what's your advice? And he told me two things, and they've always stuck with me. And one is you got to make sure you're doing what you love, because if you do what you love, you're never going to work a day in your life. And that's allowed us to pivot our business around to spaces that I just find incredibly personally fulfilling, and then has allowed us to attract a group of people that I love working with. And then two is he said, we've got this alumni database at Richard Ivey that you should leverage to get your business going. And I said, oh, I remember hearing about that. He's like, yeah, go have a look. And sure enough, you go in there and you see a Toyota brand manager and a Schick brand manager and a Campbell Soup brand manager. I sent them a note and said, hey, I'm just graduated. I love your advice. They all, wrote me back within hours, took my meeting. I went to see them. They signed letters of intent to do business with us. We used those letters of intent to go raise money from the billionaires I was talking about. And I've just always, since then, had a keen interest in the network effect and just talking to everybody about everything. Because you can always, get help from people or help people. And so now part of my ethos is any entrepreneur doing anything that can't afford to do research or media, we just give it to them. So, and it just keeps us dialed into all sorts of new cool stuff that's coming up through, things like psychedelic medicine that we're working with, a mushroom company right now. Yeah, a bunch of different other cool technology startups. And I forevermore, until my dying day, will help any entrepreneur that needs any help with anything, particularly if they can't afford to fund it. We've got a whole budget allocation to help people with that. And the reason why is because of that phone call that I had with Richard Ivey when I graduated.
I think we'd probably do a whole nother podcast just on entrepreneurship, and then because I also invest strongly in new founders, new entrepreneurs, and helping them in any way, shape, or form, because that journey is rewarding but really challenging as well. So any support you can give is amazing. Thanks, Shane, the CEO of Hotspex, for joining us on this episode of Through Your Looking Glass. Once again, I'm Patrick Comer, the founder and CEO of Lucid. Shane, thanks again for everything you've done. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Patrick. Real honor to be here. Always love chatting with you. Can't wait to see what you folks at Lucid are going to come up with next, and love to be part of that conversation. And I just incredible amount of gratitude for you and your team for all you've done and all you've brought to the ResTech world. All right. Likewise, my man. Thank you. Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. For information on ResTech, our complete list of episodes, and more, visit luc.id/lookingglass.